So happy to see you. I liked Erica's background. Normally we are in Cannes together on the Quotient in our Equality Lounge, but you know what? I'll still take it. I'll say we're in the Equality Lounge at Cannes Lions. Even though we're virtual, I get to hang out with you. So happy to see you.
Yes, great to see you too. I've been enjoying the session. The previous session was amazing.
Well, you know what? We all need to be a lily and close the gaps. So I think that's really what it's all about. And you're a lily because we're going to close the health equity gaps, because one gap after another, you are committed to closing the health equity gap. And today's conversation is just about that, the path to achieving healthcare equity. So really thrilled. So I would love to introduce you to everyone, Mary Stutz. So Mary, just introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, and what is the healthcare equity gap.
Thank you. So yes, I am the Global Chief of Inclusion and Health Equity for Real Chemistry. And Real Chemistry is a health innovation company that is focused really on making the world a healthier place when you look at it, big picture for our goal. And so clearly that is something that I have been very involved in. I have a long career, even though I'm just a baby, but I have a long career.
Age is a mindset.
It is a mindset, and you have to stop counting birthdays. I stopped at 30. So
every day should be a birthday, by the way.
Right.
We'll
That's exactly right. So I started my healthcare career at Kaiser Permanente, which is a managed care health organization, and have just continued to work in the field, moving into the biotechnology space with Bayer and with Genentech. And it was there at Genentech that I became even more immersed. I've always been very much a patient advocate and always very much focused on diversity and having equal access to healthcare for everybody. And so at Genentech, I led their first diversity in clinical trials initiative. That was a $5 million initiative the company funded, and we did that with partnerships with other organizations like the Intercultural Cancer Council and Baylor and the Chronic Disease Prevention organization. So, you'll hear a theme about partnerships as far as addressing this, and then moved on to eventually become the the Chief Diversity, Inclusion, and Health Equity Officer for Stanford Healthcare. And of course, being on the front lines at an academic medical center, at a research institution, at an organization like Stanford that is so much ahead of the curve with a lot of the work that they are doing in incorporating data analytics, technology into the whole healthcare ecosystem in the effort to create what we're calling personalized medicine or precision medicine, personalized health, all of those terms. It's all the same thing, which basically means getting the right treatments to the right people at the most effective cost and in the best locations or ways, and that speaks to access. So that's ultimately the dividing line really between the success that we want to see with health equity and the challenges that we're seeing now with disparities. So I know when you and I chatted previously, we talked about the just superhuman movement of Operation Warp Speed to get the vaccines. Not only, they started from scratch, so not only develop things that take years, it could take up to 12 years to get drugs developed, but you see this Herculean effort on the part of the industry, the scientists, all of these folks who came together and did the work to develop the vaccine. And then you saw the work of actually getting the vaccine into people, getting it distributed, getting access. It worked amazingly well. And it's still not done because we know it's not approved by the FDA. So I always say we're all in the world's largest clinical trial right now. But a lot of the myths that were out there about people not participating in clinical trials, and especially people of color and diverse people not participating. All these things are proving to be not true because people are participating. And it proves that if you give people the education, if you give them the information, if you provide the access, if you do cover the cost, make sure it's accessible from a cost perspective, which clinical trials at the end of the day typically are free. Although interestingly now some are adding copays, but for the most part it's free. And then you put it in a place where it is accessible. All of these barriers that we've been talking about for years, they were able to come together and bypass or overcome and address all of these barriers, and it worked. So what
Back up a second, Mary. We have to talk about something. We have to unpack something very important. And I want to pause for 1 second because you just identified a lot of the barriers, but you and we jumped right into this very important conversation. We talked about Operation Warp Speed for vaccines. And one of the reasons we were able to accelerate the vaccine is a lot of the work was done because of AIDS. So a lot of the vaccine work for COVID, a lot of that work was done. So that accelerated. And then I said to you one very important question. I said, a lot of women of color in particular, and Black women of color, I said, have that I know have not gotten the vaccine. And I said, why is that? And you said something to me that was so important. What did you say?
So there are a lot of reasons, but I think the biggest reason they have not gotten it is access and education. So if you will educate people to understand the science of the vaccines and the science of what happens when you take it, people will take the shot. And you also, though, that education has to come from people who look like them.
And tell me the name of the woman you said.
Yes. I'm sorry, what was your question?
Dr. Corbett.
Oh, yes. So the education has to come from people who look like them. So, human nature is such that everybody, it doesn't matter what color you are, what gender you are going to naturally trust people who look more like you. So the best thing that Operation Warp Speed did was to highlight the work of the African-American female scientist, Dr. Kizzy Corbett. Her first name is much longer than that, but they call her Dr. Kizzy. And the fact that she actually worked on this vaccine, she led a team of folks that were working on this vaccine. And when they started featuring her so that people could see her and people of color could see her, it made a big difference. And when I Googled, I just Googled because I had forgotten her full name, and I just Googled Black female, and I don't think it even said scientist, I think it said physician, and it immediately auto-populated to say who helped discover COVID-19 vaccine. So that means a lot of people have been looking her up and researching her, and people will do that if you give them enough information about something that they can then do their own research. We've been encouraging people to go to the CDC, but at the end of the day, it is the people who look like them that's encouraging them to do that. And this is the same thing now that we need to apply to see if all of these great learnings from the vaccine and Operation Warp Speed can be applied to other things that have been killing us forever, like Alzheimer's disease and cancer and cardiovascular disease and diabetes, all of these things, stroke, all of these things that are killing people. Can we now apply these learnings? I think people have an appetite for it. And the interesting thing about the pandemic is that it helped everybody realize, wow, this could happen to me. Because if you think about it, you kind of feel like it's a crapshoot, for lack of a better term, whether you might get cancer or not, or whether you might have cardiovascular disease or not. But with COVID, you couldn't control anything. And that drove more people to pay attention. It created a lot of urgency, a lot of listening, a lot of dialogue and conversation. on top of all the great work that was scurrying, happening constantly, can we keep that going and to address other health equity challenges? That to me is where we are now.
Yeah, no, and the other thing, I mean, well, we got into this whole conversation without even talking about, where you are today. So I want to back up for 1 second. So Mary Stutz, you are with a company called Real Chemistry. So tell us all about Real Chemistry.
So Real Chemistry is an amazing organization that is focused on, we call it a health innovation company. And what I love about Real Chemistry and why I joined is because Real Chemistry has taken this, created this entire ecosystem of addressing not just things like COVID, but healthcare overall, disease awareness and education, product communications and marketing, and patient advocacy and stakeholder engagement. But they've added to that all of the amazing technology, all of the data analytics. And I do think that these things are what's going to get us to more equitable care, making the data analytics, making the technology available, and encouraging people, talking about how AI, artificial intelligence, can help, and that software. There's so much out there, and even wearables, just the impact that the technology of wearables can have. And so that's what we do at Real Chemistry. We're bringing together this entire ecosystem that is health innovation, and we are applying it to some of the top therapies in the world, the top companies, biopharma companies, biotech companies, healthcare organizations, patient advocacy organizations, to really advance health equity and better healthcare for everybody.
Well, it's really amazing, and we are so thrilled to have Real Chemistry as our first ever health equality partner, which is really, incredibly exciting. So this is the first of many important conversations. And you talked a lot about partnership and the power of partnership, which is so true. So let's just talk about partnership and the power of partnership, especially in the healthcare areas and some of the innovations. What are some of the incredible innovations, especially around telehealth and the importance? We know that telehealth, especially in COVID, was so incredibly important. And one of the things that you and I talked about before, and we jumped right into it because we got so excited about the conversations that we've had, and you stimulated me to do a lot of thinking. And by the way, I did get us connected to Dr. Corbett, so stay tuned for what's to come. You talked about health equity and acts of exclusion. We always talk about inclusion, but a lot of the innovation is going to also help us bring more inclusion to some of the exclusive, the exclusionary, things that we've been experiencing. Can we go there?
Yes, so I've been doing a lot of work in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. And I do what I call my listening tours when I go into organizations to help them. And I've been doing this for years, even before Genentech and at Bayer. But this whole concept of listening to people to find out what is their real world. And you hear about real world experience. I ask folks about their lived experience in the organization, in the healthcare system, to understand what people are truly experiencing. And as I have been listening over the years, what I've realized, and my book that just came out is acts of exclusion, recurring themes of exclusion in the workplace. And what is really happening is that people are being excluded. And I'm not saying it's intentional or not, but because we don't have people with the appropriate levels of cultural intelligence and curiosity and tolerance, for lack of a better term, then we have people who are intentionally being excluded and are not getting even the opportunity. They're not even being asked to participate in clinical trials. And these things are not happening where people of color are. So right now, for you to really be in a clinical trial, you have to go to an academic medical center. Well, those aren't always located in the best locations for people to be able to get to. Some people go to clinics to get their care, especially if English is not their first language. So they go to community clinics, they go to community hospitals. And some of these hospitals, pretty much the majority of them that serve majority diverse patients, are under-resourced, right? So they don't even have the IT infrastructure, the architecture. They don't have the support staff to enable being good participants in clinical trial design. So we now have to look as a system at thinking about setting up those hospitals so that they actually can do clinical research. They can be clinical research centers in the heart of diverse communities. And we need to make sure that the insurers are paying for it, right? And they're covering these patients with their out-of-pocket costs so that they can participate in life-saving clinical trials and make sure that there is no cost or minimal cost for them. And in doing things creatively, like we did with Operation Warp Speed, who says that you cannot conduct a clinical trial at a senior center in a community? You can do these things. We have all the technology, and as you said, telehealth has opened up so many doors. And when I was at Comcast NBC Universal, there was work there. Some of the institutions, academic, actually medical centers, that reached out to us about doing telehealth and using our technology that's in the home, our X1 platform that has a lot of these things already built in, AI, Internet of Things, all of that, using that in homes to help people age in home and not even have to go to nursing homes or other places. And the biggest barrier was the ability to get that information tracked and put into the electronic medical records, the EHR, for the patients. That has been a huge barrier. But then you see with Operation Warp Speed, all of a sudden, when there was a sense of urgency now, all of those barriers to telehealth expanding are now removed. And they had no choice, because people couldn't go out of their house to go to the doctor or for routine stuff or for anything. And so that has been a huge barrier, the ability to use telehealth and have that information put into the electronic health records. And that has been the barrier when you try to go and do the work in community hospitals, community clinics. A lot of times the data is not captured because you need people in those places who know how to capture the data. And even the whole process of structuring clinical trials needs to be revisited. The staffing for that, the people who are the trial coordinators, the ones who are setting the requirements, there needs to be more diversity in that. We've got to have more Dr. Kizzies, we've got to have more diverse scientists. We've got to make sure that people are hiring more diversity to actually build the trials, do the coordination, the people who are screening, and what's the screening criteria. And the majority of the screening criteria is based on 20, basically on white males, from 20 years ago, because you didn't have people of color participating. And that's why even at Genentech and across the industry overall, we've evolved from not just diversity in clinical trials now, but diversifying the human genome database is huge, because right now the human genome database is majority European. And it was, last time I heard, it was like 19% diverse. That may have increased a little bit, but the majority of that 19% diversity was Asian heritage people. So you still did not have people of color. And again, it's not that they're afraid to give their data, their DNA to the database. It's because no one is asking them, and no one is putting the procedures in place for them to be able to do it. It's not all a lack of trust. It is a lack of access.
Well, so what you're talking about is we need to diversify the whole system.
The whole, that's it, really.
That's what we got to do. We just got to diversify the whole system.
The whole system. That's
okay.
Really it.
So simple task. Not a problem. But I mean, it's all doable. It's step by step. I mean, it really is just not accepting where we've been. It really is step by step, really
Mhm.
diversifying the whole system. So, what do you think truly the most urgent global healthcare challenges are that we need to address?
Well, a lot of it is what you said earlier. You asked me about partnership. So it really is going to take all of the pieces of the ecosystem coming together in partnership. You've got to have real chemistry, right?
There you
Among,
go.
yeah,
Great,
among
it's a great phrase.
and that was the whole intention of rebranding the company as Real Chemistry, to kind of help reinforce that message. You really are going to have that among all parts of the healthcare system, of the patients talking productively to the caregivers with clarity on the best outcomes. You've got to have the government. You've got to have public-private partnerships. You've got to have the patient advocates. Because remember, when we talk about in healthcare, people who look like me, primarily it's the patient advocacy groups who have the trust of the patients. So we need to work more with them. We need to fund them more. The majority of them are run by women who get this, and they are doing all this Herculean work. They need support. They need resources. They need doors of opportunity to be able to talk about it, like what you're doing here with the female quotient, and what you just, what you've done with the panels, the other panels, but bringing this awareness and attention. And when you bring this to women, and the reason I'm saying women is because in healthcare, the proof, it's already well proven that women are the caregivers, they are the decision makers on insurance, on making sure that the family gets their care, their preventative care, and their real need care. And so getting information to them, especially about participation in clinical trials, especially about participation in the Human Genome Database, because ultimately, and so you need all these partnerships once you even get all the work done, then to actually distribute it, to create up to scale, just like what they had to do with Warp Speed, and then to distribute it up to scale, and then to track it, to make sure you were keeping track of who got what. So that gets back to, again, the importance of the data technology and the importance of the electronic health records. If you have things missing from people's records, then that's where you end up with people getting misdiagnosed. They get medication that's conflicting with the other. So all of these pieces are so critical to look at the whole from start to finish and bring that all together. But in order for it all to work, you have to have this top piece of educating the patient. And those folks who need to actually, they are the ones who are in control. The medical centers and all those folks think they're in control, but if you don't get the patient population participating, you're never going to achieve what we all believe is nirvana, which is personalized healthcare, precision medicine, getting the exact right therapies to the right people at the right time in the right location. That's really what it's going to take. And it is doable. We saw it with Operation Warp Speed.
You know, what's also interesting is you talked about women being primary investors in healthcare because they are caregivers. And I just did a panel on women investing, financially, and they are not financially confident investors, but they are financially confident investors in healthcare because they care, which is really interesting dynamics. What do you think the future of healthcare holds?
I think that the future of healthcare holds the success that we want to see if we can get access for everybody. Now, keep in mind, when I say access, I'm talking about things like, I'm not just talking about access to healthcare, I'm talking about even before that. So we talked a little bit before, access to broadband. If people don't even have access to get onto the internet, they won't be able to get the information that they need. They won't be able to make doctor's appointments. For women, it gets to not even be able to get a job, take care of your kids. We just saw with education, the kids can't even get an education. So the access to broadband is huge. And I know Comcast, NBC Universal is doing a Herculean effort, and other companies in that space, to make sure that broadband is accessible. So making sure that that is accessible. And then again, the education. If you explain it to people, and this is where the things like making movies and doing videos, it can't be a 20-page document. That's not going to work. But these real life stories of this information, people had access, they got the information, and this was the great outcome. We in the industry have got to do a better job with our storytelling. And that's a big part of what I like to focus on is, connecting with people in a way that they are really going to understand, that's going to connect the dots for them. We have this wonderful, technology. We've got the breakthroughs, we've got innovation, we've got plans, we've got technology, we've got data. But if you don't connect the dots for people, then you're really not going to create that catalytic interaction that's going to cause the innovation that we're trying to see, cause the breakthrough of getting the right treatments to the right people to get them to health. It won't happen if you don't connect the dots. So to me, if we could do that, if we could really focus on connecting the dots and doing that for people at all levels, not just the very, educated people who are folks in corporations and all that, but I mean everyone in every community. If we can do that, that's what success will look like and get us to health.
Equitable healthcare.
Equitable healthcare.
And verified. It needs to be vetted and verified because, with the internet, there is so much junk out there too.
Yes.
That's dangerous.
Yes.
So it does need to be verified as well. How do you feel optimistic about achieving healthcare equity?
I do, because, so the main reason I feel optimistic is because so many advances have been made so quickly. And so, keep in mind, I've been working in this for over 25 years. So I have been a part of seeing these great innovations happen and telling the stories about those innovations. I will never forget at Genentech when we had Avastin, which was the first drug approved, the anti-angiogenesis, to cut off the blood supply to the tumor, and telling those stories and trying to get the support of all the stakeholders, the not only the patient advocates, but the payers, the clinicians, all these people. And quite frankly, they were upset about the price. And so we had to bring them in. I set up all these stakeholder engagement sessions with our leaders to help them understand our ultimate goal is to try to cure cancer. And this is the step to that, but we have to pay and the cost will go down eventually. But anyway, we did all this work and I had this great team, and I will never forget, after we did all these sessions, flew these people in from all over. And I went back to the team, I said, okay, are any of them willing to speak up on our behalf? And they said, no, we haven't been able to get anybody, because good PR is about getting other people to say good stuff about you. You can say all the good stuff you want, but if nobody else says it, it's not effective. And so I remember going back to my desk after we'd done all this work over weeks and sitting down at my desk, and there was a stack of mail, because in those days, when the mailroom didn't know what to do with stuff, they gave it to the head of corporate relations. And I picked up, started reading it. Dear Genentech, because of you and Avastin, I've been able to live to see my grandchild born. Dear Genentech, because of you, I saw my daughter, graduate. Dear Genentech, because of you, I celebrate it was a stack. Yes, this high. And I was sitting there like, oh my God. I ran back to my team. I was like, look, nobody else wants to speak but the patients. They were sending these letters. They had been sending them for weeks since the drug was approved. And so I'm like, what better spokesperson? This is what it's all about. Helping people to stay alive with the quality of life so that they can enjoy their families. That is my passion. That's why I keep doing this. That's why I will not stop. I read those letters and we went back and created a PR campaign with just reading the letters. I said to our CEO, because he didn't like commercials of drug commercials on TV, I said, look, we're not going to do TV, but we're going to bring these patients in and we're going to pick like 10 of them, have them read these letters, and we're going to do radio and print campaigns, and we're not adding anything to the letters. We're just, and we ran that campaign. It was the most successful campaign. Our positivity rating went up over 40% just for the company, but the education to the patients who are now like, yes, I'm going to go get this new treatment. That's how you do this. So you got to connect the dots, and you got to keep it going through the whole paradigm. You can't stop once the treatment is approved.
No, I mean, gosh, you have me at hello. I mean, that is for sure. Sold. Right. 10 times over. Okay, so let's go there, Mary, because this is what real chemistry is all about, and how you are going to rebuild healthcare better, in so many incredible ways. And also, I think, you are on so many boards, and you also talk about the importance of women on boards. When you get on boards and on public boards, how, like just everything you just said of how you are such the queen of storytelling. Why do people pick you on boards? What do you think? It's not your resume. What is that superpower? What's your superpower?
My superpower is connecting the dots. And so, yes, I work with an organization, How Women Lead, and we were very involved with getting the legislation passed in California, the initial legislation to get women onto boards, and Governor Brown signed that. And then we had the second legislation that came after that, because that first legislation resulted in primarily white women on boards, which was great. And we also wanted to have diversity on the boards as well. So then that was SB 826. Then we had AB 979 that mandated people of color and LGBTQ onto boards, and Governor Newsom signed that in 2020. And what we realized is that once we got women and people of color where it had to happen, because of legislation, we needed to prepare them to be able to actually get on the board. And to your point, this is not your resume. Boards don't even want to see your resume. They want to see your board bio. And if they're really interested, eventually they may ask for your resume, but that's not. So it's your story about you and what you bring to the table. And so we started doing these board corporate readiness workshops at How Women Lead. And now a lot of organizations are doing it. I work with How Women Lead, that's All Women. And then I do it with Santa Clara University. That's the Black corporate board readiness that has Black men and women. I really focus on helping people with their value proposition. What is your value proposition? What are you going to bring to this table? And I always say to them, we're so accustomed to talking about our results that we've gotten, but that's not what board members are listening for. They're listening for your insights, your intuition, your ideas. They want to hear that. How do you think through, and how do you handle challenges, and how do you help a company transform if it needs to transform? So for me, that was the story I told when I was interviewing for my first board seat. The fact that I am very much focused on companies bring me in when they need to transform themselves, right? Which is true. Comcast brought me in when they wanted to transform themselves from a traditional cable company to a media and technology company after they purchased NBC Universal. Bristol Myers Squibb brought me in when they wanted to transform themselves from a pure play pharma company to a biopharma company, bringing the best of biotech and the best of big pharma. So these are the types of things that companies bring me in to do. And so that's the kind of thing I talk about, companies that need to transform, that need to take themselves to the next level. And I do use storytelling. I don't sit and go through every single, job that I've done. And I'm telling you right now, I research who the board members are, and I tell women especially, but people of color in general, look, you've got to be comfortable, just like it's like, people put all the onus, quite frankly, on white men to change, right? And to adapt to everybody. But we all have to adapt. I said, so you need to be able to be comfortable around older white men and to be able to have a conversation and be relaxed. And so I know just from the folks that I've worked with at all these companies that are a lot of older white men, they love to hear a good story. And so I had good stories that I came in and told, and I researched them and knew kind of their background. So I dropped names of people that were CEOs and people I know that they respect and value their opinions, and told stories of how I influenced those people, and added some of the humorous pieces to it, but they loved it. So to the point that what they said to me is we were only going to select 2 women, because people are only going to do what the law requires. They're only going to select 2.
Let's say at least 3.
And then they said, we're going to do 3, because typically they want a lawyer and they want a CFO type person. They hadn't really thought about someone with my skill set of corporate relations, corporate branding, reputation enhancement, and really what I describe how I do it. And so how you describe what you do is so important. I describe what I do as creating environments internally and externally to create environments conducive to growing the business. You've got to bring it back to the business and growing the business. And so doing that, and it opened their eyes to a whole nother, it's not even just an approach, it's a necessary component of growing your business, engaging all of your stakeholders to help grow your business. And so that is how I have done it. That's how I coach people to do it. And that has worked for the folks that I coach.
Well, I mean, just the word growth and connecting the dots and value and engagement, like those are all words that most people don't hear. And those are the words that are the value add words, that are the change words, which I think are really incredibly imperative. Mary Stutz, you are a winner in every sense of the word. I am so happy to know you. I have to say that there is no table that is complete without you with a seat at that table, number one. And I have to say that we have real chemistry. I just, I'm so happy to know you. I am so excited to have a whole series together with you on really how we are going to bring more healthcare equity to the world. Partnership, it is so true. We are better together. 1 + 1 is 11.
Yes.
And here is to making the world a more equitable world with intentionality and with equity. And looking at what's right, not what's wrong, and everything is possible. We need to diversify the entire system.
Yes. Yeah. I love that. I have got to remember that. I'm going to use that. I love it. Thank you so much.
And here's having a conversation with Dr. Kizzy Corbett.
Yes, yes. I want to be there for that. That's going to be great.
You're creating that. I'm just going to make it happen.
Okay. Thank you.